What if I told you history hung by a thread when Cortés met Montezuma in 1519? The Spanish conquest of the Aztec Empire wasn't inevitable. It was a close call that could have gone either way. Imagine a world where smallpox never devastated the Aztec population, where Montezuma recognized the threat earlier, or where neighboring tribes allied with the Aztecs instead of the Spanish. Today, we're exploring how a single battle could have changed the entire course of world history. The Turning Point, La Noche Triste, in reverse. June 30th, 1520, a night that would change the course of history. Or at least it should have. Let's rewind and imagine what might have happened if one crucial historical moment had gone just a little differently. Picture this. Hernán Cortés and his men are desperately fleeing Tenochtitlan under the cover of darkness. The Aztecs have risen up after months of Spanish occupation. Rain pours down as warriors attack from all sides, transforming the narrow causeways connecting the island city to the mainland into deadly traps. In actual history, this Noche Triste, the Night of Sorrows, saw the Spanish suffer devastating losses. Hundreds of conquistadors died, and most of their treasure was abandoned, yet the critical turning point remained. Cortés himself escaped with about 425 soldiers, preserving Spanish hopes of conquest. What if he hadn't? In our alternate timeline, Emperor Cuitlahuac makes a brilliant tactical move. He deploys elite warriors to establish complete blockades on the causeways and strategically removes sections, creating water gaps the armored Spanish cannot cross. Like a master chess player cutting off his opponent's escape routes, Cuitlahuac transforms the Spanish technological advantage, steel swords, crossbows, and early firearms, into useless burdens in the confined spaces of broken pathways. The Spanish find themselves trapped on causeway segments, pinned down from both sides. Their horses, normally a battlefield advantage, become frightened liabilities in the narrow paths, some plunging into the lake, others trampling soldiers as Aztec warriors attacked from canoes on both sides. At the Tiacopan causeway, Cortés made his last stand. Without room to maneuver or establish firing lines, Spanish tactical superiority vanishes. By dawn, the lake surrounding Tenochtitlan bears witness to their complete defeat. Scattered bodies, broken armor, and shattered colonial ambitions. This decisive victory creates cascading effects across Mesoamerica. The remaining Spanish forces at Veracruz lose their leadership and momentum. The Tlaxcalans, who provided thousands of warriors to Cortés, see the Spanish defeat as a sign and negotiate peace with their traditional Aztec enemies rather than supporting what appears to be a lost cause. The biological timeline changes dramatically too. In actual history, Cuitlahuac died of smallpox just 80 days after becoming emperor, with the disease killing perhaps 40% of Tenochtitlan's inhabitants. In our alternate world, with Spanish contact cut short, smallpox exposure is limited. Cuitlahuac survives to unify his people and prepare for future European contact. When news of Cortés's annihilation reaches Spain, it doesn't end colonial ambitions, but significantly dampens enthusiasm. The Spanish crown, already skeptical of this unauthorized expedition, sees confirmation of their fears. Mainland empires won't fall as easily as Caribbean islands had. Future expeditions would require substantially more resources, men, and careful planning, buying the Aztecs precious time to adapt and prepare. Adaptation and alliance, the Aztec response to European contact. Victory can be more challenging than defeat. It's a paradox the Aztecs found themselves confronting after repelling the Spanish invaders. While Spain regrouped and planned their next move across the Atlantic, the Aztecs weren't sitting idle. They were studying their enemy's strengths with the analytical precision of scientists. The captured Spanish weapons, terrified horses, and handful of surviving prisoners became more valuable than gold, offering priceless insights into European technology and military tactics. What do you do when you've defeated an enemy unlike any you've ever faced? Emperor Cuitlahuac and his advisors understood with absolute certainty that the strange pale men would return with more weapons, more beasts, and greater hunger for conquest. The Aztec response demonstrated remarkable pragmatism. They began a calculated program of selective technological adoption. Spanish metallurgy techniques became their most prized study. Mesoamerican smiths, previously working primarily with gold, silver, and copper, began experimenting with iron. Their existing metallurgical knowledge provided a foundation that allowed them to progress from basic bronze to forging functional iron weapons within just 5 years, like unlocking an ancient puzzle box that Europeans had needed centuries to solve. The captured horses transformed from feared supernatural beings into military assets. Aztec warriors learned to ride them, establishing breeding programs with the handful of mares left behind. While initial stock was limited, they prioritized developing mounted units, recognizing how cavalry had nearly broken their lines during the first invasion. This technological adaptation laid the groundwork for something even more profound: a diplomatic revolution. Cuitlahuac recognized that Spanish success came largely through exploiting tensions between the Aztecs and their tributary states. This sparked radical political reform. Like rebuilding a damaged temple, the emperor sent diplomatic missions to former enemies, particularly the Purépecha Empire to their west, who had successfully resisted Aztec expansion for generations. The Aztecs had a complex diplomatic relationship with neighboring states, making alliance building challenging. Yet the existential threat posed by European invaders changed everything. Once bitter rivals, the Aztecs and the Purépecha began to see each other as potential partners against a common enemy. This partnership formed the backbone of a growing pan-Mesoamerican defense alliance. This network extended beyond military concerns. The Aztecs established trading relationships with coastal Maya cities, creating an early warning system for Spanish naval movements. Any European ships spotted would trigger message runners, ensuring news of potential invaders reached Tenochtitlan weeks before any actual threat materialized. Religious practices evolved alongside these changes. The Aztec tradition of human sacrifice began shifting toward more symbolic expressions, not from European moral pressure, but from political necessity. Maintaining broader alliances required addressing practices that neighboring peoples had long found troubling. As other cultures facing external threats had done throughout history, the Aztecs modified their religious expression to strengthen political bonds across Mesoamerica. The modern Aztec state, from empire to global power. Imagine stepping out of a high-speed train station in the heart of Tenochtitlan, not the ruins that tourists visit in Mexico City today, but a thriving metropolis of over 30 million people. The skyline before you blends ancient pyramid-inspired architecture with gleaming skyscrapers, while below, an elaborate network of canals, evolved from the city's original causeways, teems with water taxis and tourist boats. This isn't fantasy. It's what might have been if history had taken just one different turn. The journey from 16th century empire to modern global power followed a winding path. After their pivotal victory, European powers established coastal footholds throughout the Americas. These became interfaces, points of cautious trade, technological exchange, and cultural cross-pollination rather than battlegrounds of conquest. By the 18th century, the Aztec Empire transformed into a modern nation-state. Similar to Japan during the Meiji Restoration, they underwent a constitutional revolution where the emperor became ceremonial, whilst democratic institutions grew from their existing council systems, adapted for an increasingly complex society. The Industrial Revolution presented both challenge and opportunity. The Aztecs developed their own industrial base, powered by the immense silver deposits within their territory, wealth once coveted by conquistadors. This mineral abundance financed everything from universities to infrastructure projects, creating a continuous thread of development spanning centuries while preserving cultural identity. Today's Tenochtitlan would astonish both Montezuma and Cortés. The ancient island city expanded outward, incorporating surrounding lake regions into a Venice-style metropolis where modern infrastructure complements traditional waterways. Financial districts rise beside preserved historical quarters, with pyramid temples standing as active religious sites rather than archaeological curiosities. The linguistic landscape features Nahuatl as a major world language, taught from Canada to Argentina. Most citizens are comfortably trilingual, speaking Nahuatl primarily, with Spanish and English as common seconds, positioning the Aztec state as a natural mediator in hemispheric affairs. Cultural contributions flourish like a phoenix rising from historical ashes. The ancient Mesoamerican ballgame evolved into a globally popular sport, filling massive stadiums with World Cup-like fervor. Aztec architectural principles and sustainability concepts from pre-industrial cities influenced urban planning worldwide, with the characteristic stepped pyramid form becoming a signature element symbolizing stability in an ever-changing world. Would this alternate Aztec state have been a utopia? Hardly. Like any nation, it would have faced modernization challenges. balancing tradition with progress, navigating international conflicts, addressing social inequalities. Yet its continued existence would represent something profound, a non-European civilization that maintained cultural continuity while adapting to a changing world. Conclusion. What if the Spanish conquest had failed? It's a tantalizing question that opens the door to a radically different world. History isn't some predetermined script, it's a delicate tapestry woven from countless threads of chance and choice. The fall of Tenochtitlan wasn't inevitable. It was the product of specific circumstances that could have unfolded differently. Today, we see this perspective reflected in modern indigenous revival movements that draw inspiration from pre-Columbian civilizations. These movements aren't just honoring the past, they're reimagining possibilities while keeping cultural identity alive through ongoing struggles for recognition and respect. Our journey through this alternate timeline reveals the immense potential that conquest cut short. What might our world look like if these civilizations had continued their unique paths of development? The answer reminds us that the world we know isn't the only one that could have been. Stay tuned.